The first year in America was not a dream for Scarlett Hayes. It was a test. A silent war. A season of tears she never showed to anyone. When Scarlett stepped off the plane in New York, she carried one suitcase and a heart full of fire. She was 23 years old and she had left behind betrayal, shame and broken promises. The man who once told her she would never survive without him laughed when she said she was moving to America. He said she would fail. He said she would come back begging. That laughter echoed in her mind the night she arrived in a small rented room with peeling paint and a single window facing a brick wall. Scarlett did not come to America for comfort. She came for revenge. Not the kind that destroys others, but the kind that builds you so strong that the world regrets doubting you. Her first job was in a late-night diner. She worked 12 hours a day standing on tired feet serving strangers who never learned her name. Some nights she cried in the storage room. Not because the work was hard, but because the loneliness was heavier than any tray she carried. She missed home. She missed the version of herself that once believed in fairy tales. But every time she felt weak, she remembered his words. You will fail. You will crawl back. And each time those words turned into fuel. Money was tight. She counted every dollar. She skipped meals so she could save for community college classes. She studied after midnight with swollen eyes and aching hands. English was not perfect, but her determination was flawless. Customers sometimes mocked her accent. Some managers underestimated her. One even told her she should be grateful just to have a job. Scarlett smiled politely, but inside she made a promise. One day I will own a place like this. One day people will work for me. Winter was brutal. The cold felt personal. She walked to work in second-hand boots through snow that soaked her socks. There were moments she almost quit. One night after a long shift, she looked at the city lights and asked herself if revenge was worth this pain. The answer came quietly. Success is the best reply. She wiped her tears and went back to studying. In the spring, she enrolled in business classes. She learned about marketing, leadership, and finance. She discovered that America was not just a country. It was a battlefield of opportunity. Those who endured won. Scarlett was not the smartest in class, but she was the most relentless. Professors began to notice her discipline. She asked questions. She stayed after class. She volunteered for projects no one else wanted. Slowly doors started to open. By summer she earned a promotion at the diner. It was small but symbolic. She became shift supervisor. The same manager who once dismissed her now depended on her. That was the first taste of silent revenge. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just powerful growth. She saved more money and moved into a slightly better apartment. It had sunlight. For the first time since arriving, she felt hope instead of survival. Still, the past haunted her. Social media showed her ex living comfortably, smiling, acting as if she never mattered. For a brief moment, anger burned hot. She wanted him to see her struggle. She wanted him to know she was rising. But then she realized true revenge does not beg for attention. It builds empires quietly. During the final months of her first year, Scarlett took a risk. She launched a small online dessert brand inspired by recipes her grandmother taught her. She baked at night after work. She posted simple photos. At first there were only a few orders. Then word spread. Customers loved the story of a young woman chasing the American dream. They loved her authenticity. Orders doubled, then tripled. She reinvested every dollar. The girl who arrived with one suitcase now managed 2 incomes and full-time studies. She was exhausted but unstoppable. On the anniversary of her arrival, she stood again in the same city where she once felt invisible. This time she felt dangerous. Not because she hated anyone, but because she had proven something to herself. She did not break. She did not run. She did not crawl back. Her first year in America was honest and painful. It was full of doubt and discipline. It was lonely and empowering. Scarlett Hayes was no longer the girl who needed validation. She was becoming a woman who created value. The laughter that once tried to shrink her had turned into background noise. The revenge she sought was no longer about him. It was about becoming so successful that failure was impossible. Scarlett Hayes entered her second year in America with something new inside her chest. It was no longer just survival. It was momentum. The small online dessert brand that began in her tiny kitchen was growing faster than she expected. What started as late-night baking to escape loneliness had become a serious opportunity. Orders were increasing every week. Customers were tagging her on social media. Local bloggers were mentioning her brand. For the first time, she felt the shift from struggling immigrant girl to rising entrepreneur. But growth brought pressure. She was still working at the diner, still attending classes, still waking up before sunrise and sleeping after midnight. Her hands were constantly burned from ovens. Her feet ached from long shifts. Some days she felt like she was living 3 lives at once. Employee, student, founder. There were moments when exhaustion whispered that this pace was impossible. Yet every time doubt tried to speak, she answered with action. She reinvested every dollar into better ingredients and packaging. She studied branding during the day and applied those lessons at night. She redesigned her logo. She created a simple website. She filmed short videos of herself baking and telling honest pieces of her journey. People connected to her story. They were not just buying desserts. They were supporting resilience. They were investing in her dream. One evening, a local event organizer reached out to her online. They needed dessert vendors for a weekend market in Brooklyn. The booth fee was high. It was almost all the money she had saved. She stared at her bank account for hours. Fear told her to play safe. Courage told her to bet on herself. She chose courage. That weekend changed everything. She baked nonstop for 2 days. The night before the market, she barely slept. When she arrived with her simple table and homemade banner, she felt small compared to professional vendors with large displays. For a moment, insecurity returned. She remembered the brick wall outside her first apartment window. She remembered the laughter of the man who doubted her. She straightened her shoulders. The first hour was slow. People walked past without stopping. Her heart beat fast. Then a young woman tried one sample. She smiled. She bought a box. Then she told her friends. Within hours, a line formed. By afternoon, she was nearly sold out. Customers asked where her shop was located. She proudly said online only for now. That word for now felt powerful. At the end of the weekend, she counted her earnings with shaking hands. It was more money than she made in 2 weeks at the diner. More importantly, it was proof. Proof that her product had value. Proof that she was not dreaming blindly. Proof that risk creates opportunity. After that market, she made a decision that terrified her. She reduced her hours at the diner. Not completely. Just enough to focus more on her business. The manager who once underestimated her warned that entrepreneurship was unstable. He said many people try and fail. Scarlett listened politely. Inside, she felt calm. She was not with many people. She was different. With more time, she improved her recipes and expanded her menu. She began offering custom orders for birthdays and small events. Her social media following doubled in a few months. She collaborated with a local coffee shop to supply pastries on weekends. Each partnership expanded her name across neighborhoods. But success brought a new test. One evening, she received a message she never expected. It was from him, the man who once told her she would fail. He had seen her growing online presence. He congratulated her casually. He asked how America was treating her. The message was short, but it reopened old wounds. For a second, her hands trembled. She remembered nights of crying in that storage room. She remembered feeling invisible. She considered replying, with a long explanation of how hard she worked, how strong she had become, how wrong he was. Then she realized something. True revenge does not argue. It does not explain. It does not seek approval. She left the message unread. Instead, she posted a video that night about persistence. She spoke about the first year in America, about loneliness and second-hand boots and studying after midnight. The video went viral in her small community. Comments flooded in from immigrants and dreamers who felt seen by her honesty. That moment shifted her brand from dessert seller to symbol of resilience. By the end of her second year, Scarlett registered her business officially. Scarlett Sweets LLC became real. She hired one part-time assistant to help with orders. The girl who once skipped meals to save money was now paying someone else fairly. The irony made her smile. There were still challenges. A batch of products once failed before a large order. She lost money and reputation for a week. Another vendor tried copying her packaging design. Rent increased. Stress remained constant. But she no longer saw obstacles as personal attacks. She saw them as levels in a game she was determined to win. On the anniversary of her second year in America, she returned to the same Brooklyn market. This time she had a professional booth, custom signage, branded boxes, a confident posture. People recognized her. Some told her they had followed her journey since the beginning. She sold out before sunset. As she packed up her equipment, she looked at the city skyline. 2 years ago, she arrived with one suitcase in silent anger. Now she stood as a growing entrepreneur with employees, customers, and expanding influence. The revenge she once imagined as proving someone wrong had evolved into something greater. She was building freedom. She was building identity. She was building power. Her story was no longer about escaping a man who doubted her. It was about becoming a woman who could never be doubted again. By the beginning of her third year in America, Scarlett Hayes was no longer invisible. Scarlett Sweets was growing beyond weekend markets and small custom orders. Local influencers were featuring her desserts. Event planners were reaching out months in advance. She had a small rented kitchen space now instead of baking in her apartment. The air inside that kitchen smelled like sugar, ambition, and quiet revenge. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine something bigger than survival. She pictured a storefront with her name in bold letters on the glass. She pictured customers walking in every morning. She pictured stability. That vision pushed her to work harder than ever. Then the crisis came. It started with a single online complaint. A customer claimed their order arrived damaged and late. Scarlett immediately offered a refund and apology. She believed in handling problems quickly and respectfully. But the complaint did not stop there. The customer posted negative reviews across multiple platforms. They exaggerated details. They accused her of being unprofessional and dishonest. Within days, more comments appeared. Some real. Some are clearly fake. Competitors had noticed her growth. Someone wanted her reputation shaken. Orders slowed down. Messages from potential partners became hesitant. Anxiety returned like an old enemy. For a week she barely slept. She kept refreshing her phone, reading every comment. The same city that once felt full of opportunity now felt hostile. Doubt whispered again. Maybe the manager was right. Maybe most people do fail. One night she sat alone in her rented kitchen long after her assistant left. The stainless steel counters reflected the harsh white lights above. She felt the weight of every risk she had taken. She thought about quitting, selling the equipment, going back to a stable job. The idea almost. Her story was no longer about escaping a man who doubted her. It was about becoming a woman who could never be doubted again. By the beginning of her third year in America, Scarlett Hayes was no longer invisible. Scarlett Sweets was growing beyond weekend markets and small custom orders. Local influencers were featuring her desserts. Event planners were reaching out months in advance. She had a small rented kitchen space now instead of baking in her apartment. The air inside that kitchen smelled like sugar, ambition, and quiet revenge. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine something bigger than survival. She pictured a storefront with her name in bold letters on the glass. She pictured customers walking in every morning. She pictured stability. That vision pushed her to work harder than ever. Then the crisis came. It started with a single online complaint. A customer claimed their order arrived damaged and late. Scarlett immediately offered a refund and apology. She believed in handling problems quickly and respectfully. But the complaint did not stop there. The customer posted negative reviews across multiple platforms. They exaggerated details. They accused her of being unprofessional and dishonest. Within days, more comments appeared. Some real. Some are clearly fake. Competitors had noticed her growth. Someone wanted her reputation shaken. Orders slowed down. Messages from potential partners became hesitant. Anxiety returned like an old enemy. For a week she barely slept. She kept refreshing her phone, reading every comment. The same city that once felt full of opportunity now felt hostile. Doubt whispered again. Maybe the manager was right. Maybe most people do fail. One night she sat alone in her rented kitchen long after her assistant left. The stainless steel counters reflected the harsh white lights above. She felt the weight of every risk she had taken. She thought about quitting, selling the equipment, going back to a stable job. The idea almost. comforted her. Then she remembered the first winter, the soaked boots, the storage room tears, the plane ride when she promised herself she would never crawl back. She stood up. Instead of defending herself emotionally, she chose strategy. She contacted every satisfied customer from the past year and politely asked if they would share honest reviews. She posted a transparent video addressing the complaint without anger. She explained her process. She showed behind-the-scenes packaging improvements. She offered a limited-time satisfaction guarantee. Most importantly, she improved operations. She invested in better shipping materials. She hired a part-time quality control assistant. She created a system where no order left the kitchen without triple-checking. The response surprised her. Support poured in. Loyal customers defended her in comment sections. Positive reviews outnumbered the negatives within weeks. Local bloggers praised her professionalism during adversity. What was meant to break her became proof of her integrity. But the crisis had one more twist. A large regional bakery chain contacted her. They had seen the controversy in her response. They admired her resilience. They offered a partnership to distribute her signature desserts across several locations. It was an opportunity beyond anything she had imagined. It also meant giving up some control and scaling quickly. Fear returned, but in a different form. Not fear of failure. Fear of expansion. She spent nights analyzing numbers, contracts, and logistics. She consulted a small business mentor from her college network. She negotiated terms firmly. The girl who once accepted underestimation now spoke with calm authority. She secured a deal that protected her brand identity and ensured fair profit margins. When her products first appeared in those bakery display cases, she stood quietly in one location pretending to browse. Seeing her logo under bright lights felt surreal. Customers picked up her desserts without knowing the full story behind them. They just saw quality. That anonymity felt powerful. Revenue tripled within months. She hired more staff. She moved into a larger commercial kitchen. Scarlett Sweets was no longer fragile. It was structured, strategic, scalable. And then something unexpected happened. Her ex sent another message. This time it was longer. He said he was proud of her. He said he always believed she had potential. He hinted at visiting America someday. Reading those words, she felt nothing. No anger. No desire to prove anything. Just clarity. She had outgrown the need for revenge. Success had shifted from a weapon into a foundation. At the end of her third year, Scarlett finally signed a lease for a small storefront in Brooklyn. Not huge. Not luxurious. But hers. The day she held the keys, her hands trembled the same way they did counting money after her first market. Except this time it was not disbelief. It earned confidence. Opening day arrived with a line outside. Friends. Loyal customers. Curious neighbors. She cut the ribbon with steady hands. Cameras flashed. Applause filled the street. For a brief second she closed her eyes and saw the girl stepping off the plane 3 years earlier with one suitcase and wounded pride. That girl survived. This woman dominated. Her first year in America was about endurance. Her second year was about growth. Her third year was about transformation under fire. The crisis that tried to stain her name had polished it instead. Pressure had revealed her strength that as she locked the storefront late that night after selling out on opening day, she looked at her reflection in the glass. She no longer saw someone chasing revenge. She saw a founder. A leader. A woman who turned humiliation into empire-building fuel. Scarlett Hayes entered her 4th year in America standing inside her own storefront before sunrise. The street outside was quiet. The city had not fully awakened. She unlocked the door and stepped into the scent of fresh paint and vanilla that still lingered from the renovation. The sign above the glass read Scarlett Sweets in bold, elegant letters. That name once existed only in her imagination. Now it was carved into reality. Business was strong. Lines formed most mornings. The partnership with the regional bakery chain continued to grow. Revenue numbers climbed month after month. She hired a full team for the storefront. Bakers, cashiers, cleaners, social media managers. The girl who once worked double shifts at a diner was now leading meetings at a long wooden table in the back office. Success felt powerful, but it also felt heavy. Managing people was different from managing dreams. Employees had expectations. Suppliers demanded consistency. Customers expected perfection. Every decision affected multiple lives. Scarlett felt responsible not only for profit but for stability. Some nights she stayed in the office reviewing spreadsheets long after everyone left. The pressure of leadership wrapped around her shoulders like an invisible weight. Opportunities multiplied quickly. Investors began reaching out. One venture capital group from Manhattan proposed opening multiple locations across New York within a year. They offered large funding in exchange for significant ownership. The numbers looked tempting. Rapid expansion meant faster dominance, faster recognition, faster proof that she had truly won. But ownership mattered to her. Control mattered. She remembered what it felt like to have no power, to be underestimated, to be dependent on someone else's approval. The idea of giving away a large piece of her company felt like surrender disguised as growth. She attended meetings in tall glass buildings overlooking the skyline. Men in expensive suits praised her resilience. They called her inspiring. They spoke about scaling and acquisition and exit strategies. They spoke about turning her brand into a national name.